Who are the three Detroit Pistons players with the most to prove this upcoming season? We'll reveal who those three players are in today's episode of the Locked On Pistons podcast.
You are Locked On Pistons, your daily Detroit Pistons podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's the deal? Welcome back to another episode of the Locked On Pistons podcast. Per usual, I'm your host, Kook Hill. You can find me over on Twitter at Kook Hill. I want to thank you guys for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. We are free and available on all your podcast platforms. If you haven't already, head to the YouTube channel at Locked On Pistons. Hit that subscribe button. We are on our way to 10,000 subscribers. We're trying to be the 10th team at Locked On NBA channel to reach 10,000 subscribers. So please, if you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, or leave us a 5-star review on whatever podcast platform you're listening to this on. That's another great way to support the podcast. And today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. You'll hear more about Game Time a little later. And I'm super excited to talk about today's to have today's episode. I'm really excited to talk about these three players, the three players that have the most to prove this upcoming season for the Detroit Pistons. But before we get to all of that, I do want to just give some housekeeping stuff about the podcast coming up. So starting next week, we are going to have a little bit more of an organized weekly. You'll know what to expect every week on what day, topic-wise. So I'll go more into that later on, probably next week on Monday. You guys will see what I'm talking about then. So stay tuned for that. Also, we'll be having a live YouTube episode recording soon, probably in the next few weeks. Stay tuned for that. If you want to be in the comments talking with me during a live episode, we'll be having that in the next few weeks. So again, go subscribe to the YouTube channel and stay tuned for that. It should be a lot of fun. So just want to give that update real quickly. But in today's episode, obviously, like I said, we'll be talking about three players I believe that have the most to prove for the Detroit Pistons this upcoming year. Now, I'll go ahead and spoil this for you guys, that trades could potentially destroy this entire list. Like a trade could remove some players off this list. They could add some players to this list. But as of right now, July 24th, I have three players. And I'm really interested to hear from you guys. Who do you guys think are the three players that have the most to prove to everyone this upcoming season? So let's go ahead and get to my list. Number one, I don't think this is particularly close, to be honest with you. Number one for me is Jaden Ivey. Jaden Ivey, by far to me, has the most to prove this upcoming season. And the reason why I have him so clearly number one for a few reasons. One, he's trying to prove this upcoming season. I think what one of the main goals this upcoming season is that he and Cade Cunningham can play well together. Not just, survive on the court together, that they can play well together, that he makes Cade better and Cade makes Ivy better, that they can thrive together, and the team is best when those two guys are on the floor and they are the best pairing possible. We've talked about this on the podcast before. I think that the idea of Jaden Ivey eventually fits well with Cade, but can he get to that idea or ideal version of himself? Can he improve his finishing? Can he improve as a three-point shooter? Can he improve his decision-making? Can he make a jump this year in a lot of categories? That I think is number one for why I think he's under the most pressure. Number two, I think it's likely that if he doesn't perform, he'll be traded. So he has to play well, or he could be looking at a new team in a different situation, I think, come February. So he's playing for a spot on this team's future. He's playing to prove that he should be the starting shooting guard, the starting off guard next to Cade Cunningham for the next several years. He's entering year 3. The following year after this one will be contract time. So he's playing for all of that. The Pistons are making decisions on him this season. He's playing for security on this team. The third reason why I believe that Jaden Ivey is by far number one with the most approved, I think when you ask the question most approved, there has to be a risk here. Like, if you don't, then what? If there's no risk, you're not really, what are you having to prove? What happens if you don't? If you don't prove this and nothing happens, then you really have to prove it? Jaden Ivey, I think there is a big risk here. If he does not prove that he can be, or that he, can be a good player, or he's making these strides, if he doesn't prove that, not only could he be traded, that could affect his money. It could affect his future role, not just maybe with the Pistons, but maybe somewhere else. How many teams will actually want to trade for him? What role will a team that eventually would trade for him in this scenario, what role would they want from him? That's the risk of him. If he doesn't play well, how many minutes is he going to play? Is he going to be stuck behind THJ? Is he going to be stuck behind Malik Beasley? Is he going to be stuck behind insert said player? Like all of that, I think there is risk to Jaden Ivey not playing well this season, to not making that big improvement. There is a big fallout that could come from that. And I think a lot of fans obviously want to see him play well, believe that he can play well. I was watching some Jaden Ivey tape, thanks to a friend of the podcast, Dope. He was posting a lot of stuff on Twitter, a lot of Jaden Ivey clips. So I went back and started watching a lot of stuff from Jaden Ivey this past year. And there were flashes. The beginning of the year when he wasn't playing as much, when he was only playing like 20 minutes behind, I get it, Killian Hayes. But when he was playing very little at the beginning of the year, it looked like he actually was getting better at the beginning of the year. At the beginning of the year, I thought he had improved. But as the season went on, he just got worse and worse and worse, I thought. But the flashes at the beginning of the year were there, that he looked more controlled, that his finishing looked greatly improved, that his efficiency was greatly improved. I thought it felt like coming off the bench, he knew his role was just to score. And in those minutes, he was going out there and just doing his thing, doing his job, and wasn't really focused on anything else. Now, that's not me trying to say that he should come off the bench. That's not my point. My point is at the beginning of the year, he looked like, to me, I remember I recorded a podcast I think it was like late November. I was like, despite him not playing so much, Jaden Ivey looks like he's playing well. He was very efficient. He's playing a good brand of basketball, despite the lack of minutes. So the flashes were there. But Jaden Ivey, for sure, man, this is a guy who was drafted to be the backcourt pairing with Cade. This was a guy who was drafted to be the backcourt of the future. He was supposed to be number 2 guy with Cade. And now there seems to be more questions than ever about whether that's actually going to be the case. And again, like I mentioned, it's not just about the Pistons for him. If he doesn't play well, like I mentioned, how does that affect his next contract? How does that affect his next opportunity, wherever that would be? How does that affect his market? How much will he play this year? Will he slowly start to see his minutes reduced if he's not playing well, if he doesn't improve? Like those are all the things that could be the fallout of Jaden Ivey not playing well. And this is a guy, again, that has a high ceiling, that believes that he can be great, that a lot of fans believe he can be great, that has a lot of tools to be great. His athleticism can't be taught. His speed can't be taught. His twitchy quickness cannot be taught. Like, he has God-given gifts. And again, he flashes like that game last year, where I think it was after February, the one game I feel like all year, quite literally out of all 82 games, the one game where he and Cade both played well together and were playing off each other was probably the most hyped game I've seen for Pistons fans all last year. And that's even better than Cade's 40-point game against the Nets and all the other games during that stretch where he really tried his hardest to get the Pistons to win. He was going out there scoring 35 plus. Better than those, because that was the only game that looked like, okay, those guys just showed us what it could look like. Those guys just showed us when Jaden Ivey is hitting his threes, when Cade's on one and Jaden Ivey is hitting his threes, they showed us what they can be. I believe it was against the Grizzlies. I don't remember exactly who it was, but I believe Cade had like 31, Jaden Ivey had like 34. It was the one game all year where everyone was like, oh my God, that's the future. That's what we all wanted to see. That's what we all expected to see. And this year is Jaden Ivey's last chance to show that can be something consistently seen, that this can be something of the future. Because if it's not shown this year, he's probably going to be traded. And like I said, it won't just be about him getting traded. Where will he end up? What will his next contract look like? Is he losing out on dollars? Is he losing out on opportunity? That I think Jaden Ivey by far has the most to prove. He's going into his 3rd year after a disappointing second season. You have to bounce back. Consecutive disappointing seasons. I talked about this a lot on the podcast. The farther you get away from your draft status, the farther you get away from your draft night, the more the mystique runs off. the more he's a young prospect wears off. If Jaden Ivey has back-to-back disappointing seasons, front offices aren't going to be looking at him still as the intriguing 5th overall pick that was out of Purdue, and we still believe that he can be great. Like, we still have that high grade on him. Maybe there's someone like a Weaver out there who has that kind of thing for James Wiseman last year or 2 years ago, but there's just not many. It won't happen. The longer you go away from it, the longer you get away from your draft status. Going into your 3rd year, Jaden Ivey has to improve. He has to show out. Not just for the Pistons, not just for the future of the Pistons, but for the future, the immediate future of his NBA career. And I'm not saying that he's going to be out the NBA. I just explained what I meant. Not saying he's going to fall out the NBA, but how big does he want to be in the NBA? How much money do you want to make? What do you want your next contract to look like? What do you want your next opportunity to look like? That's all going to be decided this year. And if he can't beat out THJ and Malik Beasley for the main minutes on this team, on a team that the over-under has been set 24.5, if he can't beat those guys out for those minutes in his 3rd year, it's going to be looking rough for him. It's going to be looking rough. So that's why I got Jaden Ivey number 1 easily for me. I don't think it was even close. Jaden Ivey by far is number 1 on the most approved for the Detroit Pistons this year. But if you guys disagree, agree, let me know in the comment section down below or over on Twitter at KookaHill. Coming up, number 2 on the most to approve for the Detroit Pistons this season. Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to the first pitch. And for someone like me, who is an absolute procrastinator, I wait to the last second with quite literally just about everything. And it often screws me over with tickets. I'll wait to the last second to buy some tickets. I run out of tickets available. You don't get the greatest seats. You don't get the greatest prices. Ends up screwing me over. But with Game Time, it absolutely saves a person like me. You have last-minute deals that you can save up to 60% of buying last minute for sports, concerts, comedy, theater events near you. You got zone deals. You got all-in pricing. You got Game Time's ticket coverage. Your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. You got deals even going on after the event. Tickets available after the event started. And one of my favorite things about Game Time is you get to see what your seats look like in the app before purchasing. You don't purchase the ticket, show up, and be like, oh, seats weren't that good. No, you can see right in the app before you purchase them. I absolutely love Game Time, and I know you will too. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDINNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed with Game Time. So I want to thank you guys again for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. We are free and available on all your podcast platforms. If you haven't already, head to the YouTube channel at Locked On Pistons. Hit that subscribe button or leave us a 5-star review on whatever podcast platform you're listening to this on. That's another great way to support the podcast. So, number 2 on my list is going to be pretty identical to Jaden Ivey. Number 2 on my list for the most important or most the Piston player with the most approved, my goodness, is Jalen Duren. And I'm going to let me draw a parallel real quick with Ivey and Duren for why they're at the top of this list. I want everyone to think about this for just a second. Wink, wink, elbow, elbow, nudge, nudge. I just want everyone to think about this. Just put 2 and 2 together. The players that the Pistons were rumored to be interested in. The players that the Pistons went out and acquired. The positions that have been talked about the Pistons need to go upgrade, or the players that they've been linked to. What positions do they play? What positions do all of those players, like quite literally all of them, what positions do they play? Malik Monk. You heard them talking about, obviously, Malik Beasley. You got THJ. You got Isaiah Hartenstein, Nicholas Claxton, Mitchell Robinson. What positions do all of the players that the Pistons have been linked to, what positions do they play? They play the off guard, which is Jaden Ivey's position, and they play the center position, which is Jalen Duren's position. I am telling you guys this now. This is the closest you guys will get to reporting from me. This is the closest you guys will get that from me. I'm not interested in doing report. I'm not interested in that, but this is the closest you'll get. That's not a coincidence. It's not. It's just flatly not. You guys, I'm telling you guys right now, I know that for a fact. It's not a coincidence that those two positions are the ones that the Pistons were linked to. That's not fake rumors. Those weren't, guys just throwing stuff at the wall and seeing what sticks. Pistons have the most money. This guy wants a lot of money in free agency, so let's go ahead and link it up. Agents trying to, raise the market of their guys. That wasn't it. There is a reason why the Pistons have been linked to those two positions. And it's because Jaden Ivey and Jalen Duren have the most to prove and have the most uncertainty around their upcoming season and their future positions on this team. That's just flatly what it is, which is why they are easily, for me, the top two most to prove for the Detroit Pistons this year. Number one for Jalen Duren is the exact same reason for Jaden Ivey. The risk. If you don't have any risk to your season, there's nothing really you have to prove because there's no fallout if you don't. If Jalen Duren doesn't prove this year, again, he's in the same situation as Ivey. Maybe not as extreme because he's much younger than Ivey, and he has, he flashes some like his offensive flashes as a big man are intriguing enough to where I think another team would still be very, very high on him because of that. But he's still in that same position of if Jalen Duren doesn't improve this year, if he doesn't prove what he needs to prove this upcoming year, he's not going to be on the team moving forward. He's not going to be the starter moving forward. The Pistons wanted to get Hartenstein. They wanted to go get Hartenstein. They wanted to go get a Nicholas Claxton. They wanted to try to find a way to getting a starting level defensive center for this team. And heck, as of July 24th, I'm still not completely ruling it out. I think it's unlikely now, but I'm not completely ruling it out because I know it's something the teams wanted this offseason. And it's because Jalen Duren has not proven that defensively. So Jalen Duren, by far, to me, it's him and Ivey at the top of this list. If Duren doesn't prove himself, again, he may not have a future on this team. And what's his next contract look like? It's the same thing with Ivey. They're from the same draft class. Their contract status is the exact same. If he doesn't prove himself, what's his future look like? In proving himself, I maybe should have got into this a little bit more with Ivey, though on Monday, like I mentioned earlier, the housekeeping stuff, we'll talk about Ivey a little bit more next week when I reveal to you guys what the recurring schedule is going to be. But I'll do it with Duren here. What does proving this season mean? What does it mean to prove? To prove everybody wrong, I guess, would be the best word. To prove that you're worth it this year for Jalen Duren. What does that look like? Defense. He has to improve defensively. Actually, you know what? Let me pull this stat out. I've referenced Dope on the podcast already, but I'm going to reference him again. He tweeted something out yesterday, and I just remembered it. I want to talk about it. Offensively, it's not the problem with Jalen Duren. Let me read you this tweet from our friend of the podcast, Dope. He says, when Jalen Duren was in Memphis, he shot 35% on layups and 62% from the free throw line. That was at Memphis. That's 2 years ago now, or what you want to call it, 2.5 years ago now, whatever. 3 years ago, I guess, if you want to include the offseason of the draft, whatever. Anyways, that was him at Memphis. In his rookie season, he shot 48% on layups and 61% from the free throw line. So slightly improved on layups, decreased at the free throw line. In his second season, he jumped all the way up to 56% on layups and 79% from the free throw line. This is all while also flashing that playmaking ability, flashing the ability to make that short roll read, the flashing of the self-creation from the high post area, the ability to fake a DHO and get all the way to the rim, give a defender a move and get to the rim, draw a foul, or dunk on them. That's including all that other stuff he showcased offensively. So offensively, Jalen Duren, I don't feel can he get better offensively? 100%. He's not perfect offensively. He's not elite. But I don't think anyone has any concerns about him offensively. He doesn't have any. Outside, unless you want him to be a 3-point shooter, which I just don't think is realistic. I'm not holding that against him. I know the archetype he is. Is he good with that archetype? Yes, I think. I think he can be even better. So offensively is not the problem. He's so bad defensively, it wipes out all that offensively. And when your center position is that bad defensively, and also he doesn't have versatility in defensive schemes. And when I say that, I mean, what's the center that I can think of? So for example, let's use Al Horford, for example. Al Horford, and there's other guys you can think of, but just Al Horford is the first one that jumps to my mind. But a guy like Al Horford he can play in multiple different defensive schemes. He can switch, he can hedge, he can drop. Maybe not at this point. He's like 40,000 years old, but like in his prime, like he can switch, he can play drop, he can play hedge, he can play at the level. He can play multiple different defensive schemes in the pick and roll because he's a versatile defender. Duren is not that. I don't believe he's a versatile defender. Right now, he's just a non-defender. But at his best, even pre-draft, there's concerns about this. When we had Ant Wright right after the Pistons drafted Duren on the podcast, he talked about this as well, and that's been proven so far through his career. But he's not a versatile defender. He's not someone you can run drop against this guy, or then have him switch against this guy, and then have him at the level against this guy, and then have him at hedging against this guy. Like, he's a guy that I'm assuming, based off what we've seen, my analysis, and I think now my analysis matches up with the Pistons because what they've ran with him. He's a drop defender. He's going to have to be a drop defender. So the fact that he's not good at dropping, he's not an active defender, and he's not active around the rim on defense, along with the fact that he's not a versatile defender where you can probably try to do other things with him defensively, that's the concern there. That's what's going to hold Duren back, and that's what he has to prove if he wants to last in the Pistons for the next few years. If he wants to last past this February trade deadline, I think. Like, he has to prove that he's making these strides defensively. If he goes out there and he's shooting 65% lips this year, continues to improve, shoots 80% on the free throw line, all of a sudden he's, like he's continuing to raise his scoring average. He averaged like 15 points a game this year or something. Like, he does something like that offensively. If he doesn't make big improvements defensively, he'll still be traded because defense is what they need from him. You can't have your center position be that big of a slouch defensively. You just can't. It's going to cause the most amount of breakdowns within your defense. So Duren has to improve defensively. He absolutely has to. If he does, I think the Pistons have their starting center of the future easily because the offense is that good. I think the offense will be that good. But if he's going to be that bad defensively, you just can't work with that. You can't. It's just tough. You cannot do it. Along with him being slightly undersized at the position, like, you have to be better defensively. So I know he's really young, but entering your third season, you now have to start showing some strides. You absolutely have to. Because last year, I think you could make the argument he took even a step backwards defensively. So Duren, I think, easily is number 2 on the list with most improved. Also, I think even more so than Ivy, honestly. I guess this is another thing we'll throw out there for why Duren has the second most approved. I think if Duren, like, if Ivy just plays like okay, so let's say this. If Ivy plays a little better than last year, but still not like, great or anything, like if he just makes some minor improvements, but not like nothing crazy, he may be past the February deadline, but I think he still would maybe be traded. Either way, if he survives, I don't know if that's getting him like some like big payday. Like, I don't know if that's getting him this extension or anything. If Duren continues to do what he's doing offensively and then shows improvement defensively, I think he's getting a payday. Like, I think it's easy as that. Like, I think there's more upside to Duren's potential payday this upcoming season than Ivy. Maybe people disagree with me there, but I think there's a clearer pathway to Duren getting a payday after this season than Ivy. All Duren has to show is that he's making some kind of improvements defensively because the offense is already there. You show strides defensively, he's easily your starting center of the future. Easily, because he's such a seamless fit with Cade offensively, and he's such a talented offensive player. Show improvement defensively, he gets paid. So that's the other thing, the risk. Do you want to get paid? If you play well, you show these improvements, you have a clear pathway to getting paid. Like, you have that. It's right there for you. And the fact that the Pistons did not get another center to block your playing time, you're going to have all the utmost opportunity to do so. So that's why, honestly, I feel like I'm almost talking myself into saying that Duren's number 1, even though I don't think his risk is as big of a fallout as Ivy's. That's why I'll keep Ivy number 1. But yeah, I think Duren, I think it's Ivy and Duren easily number 1 and number 2, simply because they're entering the third years. They're both in the same draft class. They got the same contract situation. And the only 2 positions that we kept hearing the Pistons trying to upgrade at were their positions. So that's where I'm at with Duren. I got Duren number 2, by far, number 2. So let me know in the comment section down below or over on Twitter at KukaHill. Do you guys agree, disagree with me with who's at number 2? And if you do disagree, don't just say you disagree. Tell me who you have then. 1, 2, and 3. Don't just say, oh, you're wrong. Tell me why I'm wrong. Who do you have 1? Who do you have 2? Who do you have 3? And why? I want to hear from you guys. Let me know, comment section down below or over on Twitter at KukaHill. Coming up at number 3, I think I have this player number 3, but I certainly see how one could look at it a different way and say he should be number 1. We'll reveal who that is coming back. So I want to thank you guys again for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. We are free and available on all your podcast platforms. Hit that subscribe on the YouTube channel. Leave us a 5-star review on whatever podcast platform you're listening to this on. That's another great way to support the podcast. So number 3 on my list, I honestly think this player is going to be more controversial being number 3, honestly, than my number 1 and number 2 picks. Because I certainly can see the way, I can see the outlook or the different perspective where you have this player number 1. It's Cade Cunningham. Cade Cunningham is number 3. Just to give a reason for why I don't have other players like a Nassar or a Stu or a Ron Holland or something, or a reason why I don't have them. One, Stu's already been paid, and I think he's kind of proven what he is. I don't think he has anything else to prove. He has a long-term contract. He's been paid. Other teams want him. If it's not here, it's somewhere else. I think he's established himself as an NBA player. I don't think Stu has much. I don't feel like Stu has much of a risk. I don't think he has much to fall out from. At the very minimum, he is who he is right now for the rest of his career, and that's an NBA player for a while. So I don't think there's much risk there. So I don't think he has much to prove at all. Asar, he's in the position Ivy was last year and Duran last year, to where I don't think next year would be the year that Asar has to prove something if he has a bad season. It's not this year. If he has a bad year this year, that's when next year there's pressure. I think that's a year early with Asar. So that's why I don't have Asar on this list. And while I still have I think it's a real it's easily number 1, number 2, and then a gap until you get to the number 3 for me. Again, I can see how someone can look at it differently and have Cade number 1. Look, Cade got paid this offseason. He got paid. So he has long-term security. He does. So what's the risk with Cade? If he has that long-term security, he got that rookie max extension. What does he have to prove? With that rookie max extension comes great expectations. Not quoting the Spider-Man quote, I refuse to do it. But great expectations come with that. Cade Cunningham, I am a huge Cade guy. I believe fully in Cade. I think Cade can be absolutely exceptional in the NBA. I don't want to put a cap on his ceiling because I think his ceiling's through the roof. That's how high I am on Cade. But when you get paid this contract, it's no longer just talk. There's no longer just flashes. There's no longer when you get paid this contract by a team like the Pistons, a small market team that's trying to get out the mud, that's trying to take this next step. When they commit that type of money to you, they are telling you the front office, ownership, the fan base, the league, what you are being told. You have the responsibility now to take this team out the mud. The responsibility falls on your shoulders to get the Detroit Pistons back to glory. Now, is there more context to the situation? Sure. Do you need to have a better team around you? All that stuff, sure. But at the long run, let's just be honest. The context, as the time goes on, context wipes away. It goes away, and what remains is, were you able to do it, yes or no? And if you aren't, you're a disappointment. If you don't, you failed. That's how it goes. We all know that's how it goes. And to be honest, when you get paid that type of money, it is what it is. That comes with it. So I believe that, let's not get this confused. I completely believe that Cade can do it. But I'm not foolish enough to not know that this is the reality of the situation. Cade and his team, I don't think they're foolish enough to not know the reality of the situation. We just had Ashton on the podcast last week and a half ago, and he even mentioned it. But by far, there is a lot of pressure on Cade. And I do think if there's fans out there, if some of you guys are in the comments and you say, "Cool, no way, Cade's number 1," I can get that. I understand that. Cade has the responsibility of being the franchise guy. He has the responsibility of getting this franchise out of where it's at. He has to be the hero now. He was given this money. Given this type of money, this percentage of the cap space with the new the new salary cap rules and the new CB, all this stuff, when you pay this guy this type of money, he better deliver. He has to be that guy. If he isn't, it's going to throw a big wrench into a lot of things. So the Pistons need Cade to be who they think he is. The fans need Cade to be what the contract says. If Cade's not that, everything slows down. Like if Jane Ivey could get better this year, Jalen Duren could get better this year. Heck, Asar could get better this year. And it won't matter at all if Cade doesn't make that jump. It will not matter if Cade's not on the pathway to being worth this contract. It won't matter at all if Cade doesn't make that step. Cade absolutely has to live up to this contract, which comes with incredible amount of pressure. So if that's reason, because of how important it is to the franchise at large in the future, if that's why you have it at number one, have Cade at number one, I get that. I'm not going to put him number one. I think mostly because I believe he can do it. And there is the element of like the player himself has that long-term security. So even if he doesn't, he's still going to get paid. So I don't think he has that as much as risk still as those two guys. So that's why I'll still have him 3. But I definitely see the point of view where you would have him number 1. Cade has to deliver, man. He has to. If Jane Ivey doesn't deliver, they can bounce back from that. If Jalen Duren doesn't deliver, they can bounce back from that. If Asar doesn't deliver, they can bounce back. If Ron Holland doesn't deliver, they can bounce back. Are they bumps in the road? Yeah. Will you have to do other things to try and make up for it? Yeah. Like, you'd rather not that stuff happen. But if it does, you can get over it. Like, you can get past that. It makes it a little bit tougher, but you can get past that. If Cade isn't that, if Cade isn't him and Cade doesn't deliver, I think you're heading for another rebuild, which is tough to say. Unless you get a diamond in the rough that no one saw that eventually shows that he's better than Cade. He's the franchise player, actually. Like, unless you have a situation like that, like, I guess, like a Bulls situation with Derrick Rose and Jimmy Butler years ago, like when D Rose got hurt, and they still had a good team with Noah and Todd Gibson and all those guys. Like, they still had a decent team, and D Rose wasn't completely off the map yet. Like, he was on his way down, but he still was a good player. But once he got hurt, he wasn't that same player. But likely the Bulls had someone come out of nowhere in Jimmy Butler that rose to stardom. So that kind of alleviated a little bit of that. So unless like a situation like that comes from, and it's not a likely one, and you definitely are not banking on that. Unless that happens, if Cade doesn't live up to this contract, you're probably heading to another rebuild. And I don't think anyone wants that. So I can see the point of view where you have him number 1. But I think this is easily my top 3 here. Ivey, Duren, and Cade. Easily. There's a lot of pressure on all these guys for different reasons, for different expectations, and different things they need to prove. Each one of them have different things they need to prove. But equally, they all need to prove something. And I think they are by far top 3 on the most approved list for the Detroit Pistons. So let me know in the comment section down below or over on Twitter @KukaHill if you guys agree or disagree. That's all I've got for you guys today. Thank you guys for making Locked On Pistons your first listen every single day. If you're available on our podcast platforms, hit that subscribe button to the YouTube channel. Leave us a 5-star review, whatever podcast platform you're listening to this on. And until next time, I'll see you guys later. Stay safe out there. Until next time, peace out.